Herzlich willkommen zu unserem nächsten Talk. Wir begrüßen auf der Bühne Shumi und Julian, die heute über ein sehr großes Projekt reden werden und wie man das Ganze skalieren kann. Wir begrüßen auch unsere Freunde im Internet, die jetzt wieder dabei sind. Und ich würde sagen, viel Spaß und stellt viele Fragen danach.
Danke.
Okay, so we're going to talk. Well, the introduction was in German. I figured because we introduced it as an English talk, we stick with English. Open, large, and complex: how to manage a 3,500 square meter space, which stands in our case for a make space, hack space, creative art, exhibition, many different kinds of spaces, all combined together with 400 members. And all of this was made possible by a collaboration with public institutions such as our local city administration. And we will present some of our challenges that we have faced and the approaches that we took towards solving them. And the space we are talking about is called ZAM, which in the southern German dialect stands for together, or we also see it as an abbreviation for Zentrum für Austausch und Machen, which in turn is Center for Sharing and Making. This is Shumi.
Yes, and this is Julian.
Shumi is the volunteer board member elected by all the 400 members, or at least the ones showing up to the General Assembly. And technically she's my boss. And I'm the technical director and one of the full-time people at our space. Now, maybe the question arises, where the hell is Erlangen? Erlangen is in the southeastern part of Germany, Bavaria, although the people from Erlangen don't want to call it Bavaria, they want to call it Franconia. The city is about 100,000 population, and as Wikipedia puts it, many aspects of daily life in the city are dominated by the university and the Siemens Technology Group, which means 1/3 of the population is students at the university and 1/3 is working for Siemens. And then now, ZAM is located in the city center and was originally built in the 1690s. And we have this pretty huge building, or actually it's two buildings, with a southern facade that is going to host a color workshop, project spaces, co-working, a tinkering workshop, space for sharing, potentially a cafe and even residencies. And on the other side, we're going to have, or already have, some of these, textile print workshop, prototyping, electronics, woodworking, in the future, hopefully a hacker space and a bio and metal workshop. And now the question arises, how is that all of that possible? And we want to highlight 4 different perspectives on this. First of how we partnered with public institutions and the conclusions we took from that. Then how do we do construction? Because the building has been used as a retail shop and therefore is actually not very well suited to the type of operation that we plan to do. And we do some of the construction, or actually a lot, with volunteers. And how do you arrange construction and volunteering? Then the balances between openness, inclusiveness, and community, how you can navigate that, and then finally about designing both with a bottom-up chaos approach as well as some structured planning that gives a coherent appearance. And we would like you to take away the inspiration to think big in your own projects, to consider collaboration with public institutions, and also not to need to reinvent the wheel. So please take away what fits your need, but also ignore what doesn't. Partnering with public institutions. So the picture you see here was the handover of the key to the building that I very briefly showed you before. On the left hand, we have Mike, the board or head of a board of our nonprofit association, but he also started the CCC Erlangen. So there's a close relation between the CCC group and ZAM. Then we have the city mayor that handed over the key, the former shop owner, and probably most important here in this picture, the commissioner for culture and education. Because that's kind of the interface that we faced. It started all in 2015, where in the city we already had a Fab Lab, a small makerspace at the university, which we as students started some years before, but it's really tiny and small. Then the staff of a public library invited themselves to visit us. And from that, we started an event where we would move our small Fab Lab makerspace to the city center, to the city library. And we had a lot of people that engaged with us, and more specifically, we got in touch with the city administration. And that led to a roundtable which was on digital workshops, Fab Labs, makerspaces, which was started in 2018. And with that, we were able to connect with politicians on the city level, administration, and many other initiatives, which was beyond the Fab Lab and the CCC, that then developed the idea to have such a central place in the city, which supports cultural activities, digital education, but also from the political perspective, revive the historic city center in a sense to bring in more people that otherwise would not be around, and to be a counterbalance to many closed shops. So maybe in your city there are many closed shop fronts in the city center, and being a counterbalance, a new magnet for people to come by, was very important. Then it needed a bit of patience, and actually 10 years, from 2015, almost 10 years, but there's an earlier starting point to that. And it ended up with the city supporting us to get the building and fund us reconstruction and operation. And now we already have 400 members and 1,000 square meters of workshops, plus more space, which is still under renovation. So another twist that just came a couple months ago was that the city now struggles with their own budgets, and therefore some of the funding is placed with a question mark behind it. But there's also opportunity from that, because the public theater of a city is probably going to become our tenant. So we're going to move in the first floor that you see here, and so we will in future have closer collaborations with the theater group of a city. Now, looking at the construction side, we started out with 3 years ago with this huge building, and then we spent about 1 year of planning, getting the construction permits and everything. And during that time, we had to clear out many parts of the building. And we already realized very early on that it would take a lot of time and a lot of energy to get to a usable space. So we right from the beginning said it's not going to be a sprint, it's more like an ultra marathon. Up to this point, we have 3 years of construction, renovation, clearing out the building. And this is always supported with volunteers. And this volunteer work is to a large part based on this long-term perspective to have this community place together after the construction and renovation is finished. And to string everyone along, we also have a provisional operation and use all the time while this construction is going on. So from the first day on, every Friday, we open some to the general public. Everyone can come by and already use it, and whatever is already available. Sometimes it's a very small part, sometimes it's a bigger part. To get an idea of what we're considering with the construction and renovation, here you see one of the rooms which the former shop used to store their screws and other material which they sold. And many of these racks, actually most of them, what you see here, and there were many before, had to be taken down, all the things being placed into some inventory and recorded. Then the ceiling had to be torn down, everything painted, and all the electricity had to be redone. Then we had in total more than 1 kilometers of shelves which we took down. We had more than 20 tons of raw metal that needed to be moved. And more than 850 square meters of drywall ceiling we tore down by our hands. And that ended up in, up to this point, more than 10,000 volunteer hours. And I compared it to the angel hours that we have here at Congress. It's actually 1/3 of Congress. So think about how many people work here around the clock at Congress. If you take 1/3 of that, that's 3 years of our work in our rather small city. And that's possible because we always put a very low entry barrier. You only need to show up because every week we offer these times, and there's no skills that you need to bring to, in, because we can teach you how to get along. But something that is necessary to make that possible is the full-time presence of me and my colleague, Jochen, and some others that can be the interface between the professional construction companies and the volunteering, which will always take place in the evenings and the off hours for the professionals. So what we see here is the former, well, that's where we have our wood workshop now, and that's how it was before, and that's how it's now. There's still some renovation going on. And then we also have the construction companies which do some of the work which we as volunteers cannot, which, for example, installing a glass ceiling and tearing down much larger things where you need big construction equipment for. And then there's some, often the question is, how do you work with professions like electrical work that volunteers and untrained people are usually not allowed to do that. We try to partner there with professionals, where the professionals instruct us how to do it, and then they sign off at the end. So we're kind of their cheap employees, and they tell us what to do, and we assist with the manual work. So it became we realized that it's necessary to be very reliable in the terms of the possible engagement that you can have. So we stoically continue every week, or actually twice a week, every Tuesday and every Saturday. You can just show up. You don't need to register. You don't need to say that you will be coming by. If you come once, it's fine. If you come every week, it's even better, but it's the same value. And it's also very social, and this is actually something that Shumi started, that we have home-cooked dinners every time. So when you take part in our construction work, there's always a round of introductions and a meal together, which makes it a very social part, and we therefore kind of become a permanent spot on the calendars of people because they really want to come back. The only thing that we really struggle here with is engagement of Flinter people, which I'm not really sure what we are missing here. But especially in this renovation construction work, we have much less or fewer Flinter participation than in other areas of ZAM. And as I mentioned, it's always in parallel with the provisional use, because people want to see what the end goal is going to be. So there need to be some things already be going on, not just construction and not just renovation. So here, for example, is a workshop how to use our laser cutter, which is already there. Here was an event where you could develop and play board games, which were developed at SUM. There was another event on where you could use retro computers for playing games, and that brings us to our balance.
Yes. So again, I am a board member of SAM, so I'm a volunteer working there, and actually one of my my responsibilities, but also one of my personal goals, is to keep the balance that we talk about here. We want our place to be open and inclusive, and also we want to have a large community, and we want everybody to be happy. So we want them to have some harmony. The thing is that, as Julian mentioned, we are financed by public funds, and basically we have to be open for everybody, but we also strive to be open for everybody. But this is not always easy. As you know, not everybody shares the same opinion, and unfortunately, common sense is not that common as you would think. And sometimes we have some people that we had some unfortunate experiences with some people. We call them intensive members because they really do need a lot of attention, and they take a lot of time from us if we want to deal with them individually. And we want this place to be we want everybody to feel safe there, and we don't want them to drive people away. So there's this balance between welcoming everybody and however they are, but also like nurturing a community where everybody gets along and where they don't feel bothered. Because some people sometimes just monopolize all conversations or the time of everybody. I think everybody knows somebody like that. Am I right? But yes, this is a challenge. We don't have any answers. We just try our best. And we are currently now, because we had situations in the past, we are now currently working on a code of conduct. So we're trying to write specific rules and the consequences of not respecting these rules. And this is a project which is open to the whole community. So everybody has a very low threshold to participate in the making of this code of conduct and these rules. And everybody has a say in what should be written in there. And we hope that we can make it as clear as possible, so there is no interpretation possibilities for the people. And we want to have it as something that we can, like when somebody does something that we think that is not good or it is not good for the community, that we can tell them, so this is our set of rules, and you didn't respect these rules, so this is why we will kindly ask you to suffer the consequences. It's not ready, and it will never be ready. But we are hoping to have one. We have to have it ready until maybe the beginning of the year, or some part of it that we can relate to, and then extend it according to the needs and the situations that happen. Inclusiveness does not only relate to the disabilities, but also the accessibility of the information. It is important how we structure and how we communicate what we offer in our space. And because we are such a diverse place, so we have like very young people, also children, but also teenagers, like from 16 to seniors. So we have a group of retired people that are also actually offer a repair cafe, and they are very active in our community, and we want to be reachable for everybody. So we can't just like offer like digital sources of information. We have to find other channels that are available for everybody. And it's also important to realize that we are not aware of the needs that everybody has, because we don't have these needs. So like if we talk, for instance, about disability, like if you are in a wheelchair, and we, like the people that are designing this place, and by designing I'm not talking about like posters, but like the architecture and the structure of this place, and none of us is in a wheelchair, then we really don't realize what the needs of these people are. So we try to talk to everybody and ask them what their needs are, or to like to find out how we can make it better. And also, this is a project that will never be finished. So there's always something new that we can add and we can improve, and we are always open to suggestions and the community, and to listen to what they need, to what we can do better. Also, we have emphasized the community. Here I have to tell you a little story. It's a little anecdote. So there's this guy. He's called Alex. He's French. And since how many years now? Many years.
7, 8 years.
Yeah. He's been traveling around Europe with a van that he built himself. He's a maker. And he has visited all these maker spaces, including some hacker spaces, because they are always like, they find each other, the makers and the hackers. And he made like the community of makers around Europe. So he personally knows all these people, and he brought them together. He created a Europe-wide association, and he organizes also like an event, which is at in autumn, beginning of winter every year. This year it took place in Tam. We hosted it. We had about 150 people from all over Europe representing these maker spaces. And this guy, which we know because he visited us before several times in Erlangen, actually. He was even there as we were planning TAM. And he came to me and he said, you know, all these places in Europe, they have like these super cool machines, and they have like these wonderful places, like big places, very nice, very modern. But nowhere in Europe did I find a place that has a community like yours. And this really made my heart very warm, because I'm very proud of it, because this is something that I really value that we have in Erlangen. We have a lot of people like from the university that also came to us, but also people that just came from the street inside and saw us and thought we're doing a really cool thing, and they wanted to help us. And we offered a warm place and a welcoming place for them to come in, and they stayed. And this makes me very happy. Thank you. But for this, we have to consider a lot of things. So we need the harmony, very important. We need to manage the conflicts and the intensive people. But we also have to take care of how we nurture them. Like, for instance, in situations where we have people that work there full time, but like most of the people are volunteers, and we have to find like some time for both of them to come together and work together. So during working hours of our employees, but also during free time of the volunteers. And we also have to be very careful of how we communicate our decisions. So the board is actually volunteering, which means we don't really have that much time, or we shouldn't have so much time for working in the makerspace. And we do work a lot on the vision and the strategy and the decisions that we take, but we have to be very careful how we communicate this, because we have an association which is democratic and people vote for us. And they also want to, they should represent our vision and support our vision. So when we take a decision, we also have to explain how we took this decision and why we did it, and we also have to include them in these decisions. And actually, one of the most, I don't know, from my perspective, like one of the most annoying things is like when you do the work and you make some decisions, then you also have to work on how to communicate these decisions, because people are like, they want to understand. So one of the strategies is to actually make some snapshots of the meetings that we're doing, like the notes of the meeting. We send them every 2 weeks where the crew meets. We send the results of our meetings, but we also send a monthly newsletter, or we organize community strategy meetings. This is one of the meetings that took place more or less at the beginning. That's why there's so few people. Now there are actually more that come and contribute to these. Yes, now I have some photos, for instance, of a project that was made during this seminar that I was talking about. They had here some pieces of wood. You can see in the middle that is our logo. And everybody got a piece of wood, and they were allowed to design it however they wanted, but then we all put it together to represent the contributions of our community. This is another picture of these meetings that I was talking about, the crew, which is made out of the board, which are 7 people, and also our employees that we pay. And this was one of a so-called retreat, maybe, where we we get together for a whole day and we try to discuss on the most important issues and the strategy. Another picture I want to show is not only the happy people that are in SAM, but actually the posters which are in the background, which represent actually the information that I was talking about and how we try to show people about the plans that we have about the future. You can see there map of the building, like the layout of the building in the background, and where we inform them what we plan for and the workshops and where they will be. And we also ask them to contribute to ideas or maybe suggestions on how to change that. But we also invite the community to work on workshops, like all-day workshops, where they talk about their needs or how they imagine a place. We even had this picture is taken from a weekend where we invited the kids to come and say how they would imagine a place that would be nice for them. So you can see a couple of them. They made a little model there of how they think SAM should look. Yes, and this is a bridge to the next topic, where I will talk about designing our place. And with design, again, I don't mean posters necessarily, but this is also included, but more like the layout and architecture of our place. And the way we connect the bottom up, like how we ask the community how they imagine our place, but also the structure coming from the crew and the people working on this professionally. Sorry. So the main goal is that we want everybody to feel at home. Have you heard of third places? This word is used to describe a place which is not home and not work, but a third place where people come together, where they want to go actually after they finish work maybe, or when they don't want to be home. So we want it to be welcoming, and we want people to feel there like they contributed in some way. So I want everybody to come and say, I made this, if they want to make something. Some just want to trust the process, but some want to contribute. And we have a lot of people that actually invite their friends, and they make a tour around SAM. It takes about 2 hours. So by the way, if you want to visit us in Erlangen, consider reserving about 2 hours to see this huge building. And it's nice when they walk around with their friends and they're able to say, oh, look, I contributed to this piece, or I made this. And in order to do that, we have a weekly design or configuration. I don't know what the best description of this meeting is, where we actually have an architect and a designer, which are part of the team, but also people that are just volunteering and want to contribute in designing the place and how it should look. But everybody is invited to come and bring their ideas, and if they can't come, they can also write an email and suggest some things that they would like to see or need. But because we also have to have a coherent place, which looks nice, we also have to trust in the process, which are these professionals that are designing the big picture. I have a picture here of one of the workshops. This is how the space looked after some renovation. So it used to look even fuller. I don't want to say worse. It was fuller. And then we did a bit of renovation. And afterwards, this is our prototyping workshop right now. It's not ready yet, so nothing's ready. Nothing will ever be ready in SAM. But right now, with the contribution of a lot of our members, this is how it looks right now. One thing I want to point out, which I think it's very nice, is this wall made out of wood with some of the glass. This was one of our members who's a carpenter, and he actually designed this wall from pieces of wood, but also the glass pieces are actually pieces out of a shelf system that we had from the previous owner. So we tried to reuse the things that were there, and that was actually his idea, that we do it like this, and I think it looks very nice. I was talking about the contributions of the community. There's this little anecdote that happened. It became a little legend now. So this guy is the one Julian was also talking about. He's designing board games. He figures he has some ideas, and he realizes these ideas. He builds the pieces for these board games and the rules and everything in Some, and then he invites people to come over and play the game with him, where he refines the rules or he understands if there are some problems. And he basically is super active in Some, and he spends a lot of time there. And one day he wrote in one of our common channels, like, "Oh, look, I'm here and I found this red sofa, which is super cool, and I would like to buy it, and then we'll put wheels on it, and then we can roll it out and whatever." And then we were very surprised by this, and we actually said, "No, don't do it. We have to discuss. We can't do it so fast." But this was a learning experience, because this also led in the team to discussions, because some of us were like, we want everybody to contribute, but then there was the other side who was like, no, we have to have a coherent image and everything has to look the same. You can't just buy a random sofa and bring it over. But then we came to some kind of understanding together. So this was back in 22, and this is how it looks now in 23. We have a lot of sofas, as you can see, different styles. So we listened to our community, and we realized that people actually need a place to sit down and talk to each other and relax after a hard day of work. Another thing that we introduced was a sort of solution for ideas like these or needs like this. It's a so-called experiment where people are allowed to put something, whatever they want, in Some. This is an example. Well, this is just a piece of paper. This is not the experiment. The plant should stay there. But the rules are that if they place something there, it should be safe. It shouldn't be in the way of other things, and it could be undone after 4 weeks. It is meant to start a discussion on the needs of our members, and if their solution that they offer is good, then we keep it, or we try to find some other compromise to offer some solution for their needs.
And it's a sticker, so you take it off the paper, you write your name on it, and why you did it. You put it on your sofa or whatever you want to place at Some, and that gives it a permission to stay around for 4 weeks. And then we start the discussion. Why is it there? Do we need it? Do we want to continue with it?
Or it starts complaints. We also have community project calls where we realize that we have a need. Then we ask the community to help us and contribute with some ideas. For instance, we have these lamps that you see here. We realized that we need some lights for the prototyping workshop, so we asked people to just make some lampshades, and this is what we got. And I think they're very pretty. Another opportunity for people to contribute is these are the main windows. So you saw the configuration of our building. We have a lot of windows that go to the main street. It's basically the shopping street of Erlangen, where a lot of people cross by. There's also like some bars and clubs, and a lot of people just cross by and see inside. And these windows are our way to present to the world. And we have a community of artists that has an open call every 6 weeks. And they give a theme for the decoration of the windows. In the picture, you can see the Christmas decorations, but usually they have themes like, for instance, the next one will be hackers' ethics. And they just like tell people, make some piece of art that can be interpreted this way. And then they make something, and then we have it in the window for everybody when they cross by. And actually, it's really popular because a lot of people stop by. They make a lot of cool pieces, and it's really an eye catcher. I've noticed a lot of people walking by and making photos or admiring the pieces. So a little summary of our strategy on how to work with the community in designing our place. We were talking about the structured versus the chaos. As we said, the structured part is the one which should be professional, which should be aware, where we should have some awareness of how we are inviting people that are outside, how we're inviting them to come inside, and also the impression that we make towards our supporters, in this case, the city. And we also have to figure out how to reflect our goals, our vision, so people understand when they look from outside what do we actually want to, what is happening here actually. But of course, we also have to cater to our community, and we have to support their needs. And they have to identify with the place where they come and spend so much time in, like one of these third places I was talking about. Another picture I wanted to show, because I always talk about the community, this is a project that actually represents this idea a lot, especially because our volunteers helped us with the building and renovating and building up everything that we have, and we wouldn't exist without them. This is cyanotype exposure. I don't know if you ever heard about this. They put like some substance on this sheet, and then some parts are protected from light, and that which is not protected from light turns this color. And these are all the hands. I mean, these were volunteers that took part in this project, and these are. It's a symbol of how their hands participated in building this community together. What we want to give you as a takeaway is to think big, be open, and maybe collaborate with your public library first, and then things will go from there. If you are interested in hacking events that happen in TAM, I want to tell you about, I don't know if you ever heard about the ICMP. This was a tiny little camp that took place every 2 years next to the Club Mate breweries, or the original Mate. Since Corona, we didn't organize it anymore, but we want to offer a tiny camp, which will happen inside of TAM in our building. This will take part from February 28th to March the 2nd. If you check the website, you will see when the tickets are available. All right. I'm going to start a little video that was taken during this VUCA seminar that I was talking about with your European makers. And while it runs, we will take questions. I don't know what. Yes.
I'd like to know if you paid any people to do moderation work, or this kind of, how do you bring all these different perspectives and ideas together, and in the end decide what to do, and or kind of what were the backgrounds that helped on a process level?
So, if I understand your question correctly, so this started as an idea, basically. So we started, actually, Julian and I, when we were students, and a lot of other people from the university, so not just us. We saw at a Dutch camp, actually, they had a mobile fab lab. And we thought, oh, this is awesome. We could do this in Erlangen too. And then we started talking to the university and so on. And then this is where we got the experience of managing maybe or seeing the problems in a community, and then we got other people involved from the city, but also other people that were interested in a subject like this, or making a space like this. So it's actually quite popular now in public libraries that they offer open labs, like this type of fabrication laboratories, where they have these tools like laser cutters and 3D printers, and they offer them in the library for people to come in there and make their own things. So the city was definitely interested to have a place like this, and it was important to just connect with the people that could support us. Do you want to add something? Does this answer your question more or less? No? Okay, then please. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine. Just, I don't know how to put it. I guess, did you have people specifically there to facilitate the discussions and help the decision processes, or how do you develop the structures?
So we do have professionals. So one of our employees, well, Julian is a computer scientist, but has this experience in organizing things, and also from the Fab Lab. And then we have an architect, which actually is not an architect of houses, but more he designs expositions, like for museums and stuff like that. This is one of the professionals that we have. And like in the sense of moderating people, it was learning by doing experience.
So I can try my version of the answer. We started out with the first by having already a makerspace at the university. Then we had this round table that I mentioned, where we got many different groups together, which was from the makerspace, from the CCC group, from different groups from the city, like the Volkshochschule, which is like an adult education institute. Then there's the Jugendkunstschule, which is a youth art institute, and groups like that, which all had some common ideas of digital education and cultural programs. And we all sat around a table, moderated by the cultural department of the city, but not with professional moderators, but just like all on equal level. And we discussed what are our needs, what are our ambitions and visions, and from there we developed the common vision of what is now SAM. And with that vision from the group, we started introducing it into the other groups which already existed, like the CCC group Erlangen, the Fab Lab, and all the others. And some of them kind of came in and even dissolved into this, what is now SAM. Others stayed with their own identity and are participating and adding to it. Others retreated, not in the sense that they didn't participate in it, but they had their own things to do. Like the city library, they fully support us, but they have their own thing to run the city library. They cannot go into SAM and run the place. So whenever we have the opportunity to collaborate on events, we join up, but not all the time. So we have a lot of support from these different groups, and we share a common vision. And then now this vision is being transformed and extended through all the participation from the community. And this participation process, we moderate ourselves. We don't get external moderators unless we have bigger issues. So for that, sometimes we have invited professional moderators in situations where it was necessary. And on top of that, we also had, for the internal group, we had an organizational development guide, coach, yes, coach that supported us for, I think, half a year, and we had some funding to pay them. Does that answer it? Okay.
You said sometimes committed people don't fit into your project, or
Where?
here,
Okay.
or monopolize resources and such things. Have you had situation where no solution was found, and how would you handle it? Or have you some concepts to deal with such processes and find a solution?
So, yes, I'm going to answer, right? As Julian also mentioned, for conflicts, where we had conflicts within our team, unfortunately, we had a professional mediator where we tried to have a conversation and find a solution for everybody. But unfortunately, well, some situations it worked, some situations it did not, and then it was also a learning process for us, because we learned to accept the fact that we can't force anybody into having a solution. And if they choose not to, then they have to leave the team, and we have to accept that. It's sad, and we were sad to lose some people, that one person, but we have to accept that. And yes, this is another situations for which we don't really have a solution. We're working on a solution right now, and this is the code of conduct. Because we had situations where we didn't have actually written rules where we can tell people you're not supposed to behave like that. And we don't, the German bureaucracy, you can't do anything unless you have a rule. So we can't really kick them out. We can talk to them and we can try to explain to them that this is not very nice, but not everybody understands that. So soon we will have these rules where we can point to them and say, these are the consequences. Does this answer the question? Thank you.
Hello. Talking about rules, As you are a very big group, maybe you know, do you know whether Vereine need stuff like Leserschutzbeauftragte and stuff like this?
So in our case, we have only lasers which are class 2. So in that case, we don't. There, well, the last time I discussed it with our representative for health and safety, it was marked off as we don't need it. I don't know the actual rule set that they were looking at that point. If you're interested, we can have a look at the documentation that went along with that. Probably it says some paragraphs and laws and regulations that this decision was based upon. But right now we don't need one.
But if you have a sticker with Vertrau mir, Brudi, I'm looking for some for our lasers.
And if you are talking about like the Fab Lab in Erlangen, is this your organization or is it something else?
So the Fab Lab, I started the Fab Lab, but from I started with the first email, and then we were a larger team of people. And when we both of us volunteered in the Fab Lab is 100% volunteer based for about 10 years, and it's still going on. But now we switched over to XAM and are pretty much all the time at XAM, and the Fab Lab is working in parallel to us. The Fab Lab had the idea of being there for the general public from the beginning. It's still open to the general public, even though it's based at the university. But just by the location where it is and by the how it's run, because it's run by students for students, it doesn't take into account the needs that other people from the city center and which are not related to the university have. Because in some cases they cannot, because of the location of the Fab Lab. You won't find people outside of university that have never had any touch with the university. Maybe they went to vocational school. They will usually avoid going to universities because they don't feel at home there, and that already excludes them. These are things that we are now thinking of when we designed XAM, but we didn't think of that when we were designing the Fab Lab. So the Fab Lab has its own justification to be there, as does XAM, but they're separate things and entities, but we collaborate from time to time, and we know each other.
So and besides that, the Fab Lab has like about 50 square meters maybe, and there was absolutely no place for a community there. I mean, people knew each other, but there wasn't a place where you could just sit down and talk to people, and that was like one of our big wishes, to also get people together and to exchange ideas and so on. Like right now in SAM we have a big artist community, but also the nerds and the technical people, and they find each other, they talk to each other and collaborate together, and this is actually super nice. And we couldn't have that at the university, unfortunately. Another question.
Yeah. Hi. I would like to know how you handle getting new members, as in because you mentioned the whole inclusiveness, but also that people can be a lot to handle, and how do you actually make it so that people feel welcome, that they want to join you, that they want to become members, and have everyone be able to become members without maybe in the future having problems when someone has a problem with another member or something else happens. And because I know also from other groups where they legally have problems actually kicking out members, even though sexual assault happened, because, oh no, it's like legally they did nothing against the rules of the club, basically, and it's super strange. And how do you actually, is there an introduction process or something like this, for example, or like a rule of like voting or anything?
Yeah, there is no onboarding process for members. So it all starts that XAM is open for everyone. You don't need to be a member to participate, to volunteer. Pretty much everything at XAM is open to you if you're not a member. Except for one thing at the moment, which is also in our bylaws. You cannot get 24/7 access to the building unless you are a member. That's the only, well, it's a necessary requirement, but it's not sufficient to get access. Membership is very a low barrier. So you sign up on our online form and you pay €1 a month. Because we get the funding from the city, and like even if all of our members were paying a higher fee, we would not be able to finance the whole project. So that's why we have a very low member fee at the moment. And regarding how to deal with problematic members and member rights, which automatically come with a membership in Germany, is that we will take we already started taking the code of conduct, or the concept of a code of conduct, into our bylaws and the rules of a club, and referencing to that. And then in the future, we will also include it in different steps, like when you get access to the building, you will have to sign off that you will be committed to the code of conduct and adhere to it. And if you don't, you will leave the club. And then it becomes a more sound process to the lawyers. At least that's our hope, but we will only know once it goes in front of court. Yeah.
But just we also have a team also of volunteers, of people that offer these services of actually being some sort of awareness team, but not in the sense that you know this team from here, but like when there's conflict, that they talk to people and they try to find like some kind of conversation or a way to get people to talk to each other and understand what their problems are. So we already have these functioning, and I hope it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but then you also have to accept when it doesn't.
Yeah, I have two questions actually. The first one is about the funding. You mentioned public funds you applied to. Can you tell us which ones it was, where?
Okay, so when we started the whole project, even before we founded the association, we applied to funds from the Ministry of Interior Affairs, which was called Post-COVID City. And the idea there was to design and prototype ideas of how cities can become more resilient to crisis in the future. And we proposed the idea of sharing knowledge makes a city more resilient, and some to be one of the prototyping ideas. And through that, we also asked what is now our community. At that time, many of these people were not part of the community yet. We had an open call for projects where people could also get some part of the funding that we got for their own projects and participate through that. That was that funding. Then the main funding that we now have is through the city of Erlangen, which are cultural funds. So the cultural department applies for these in collaboration with us, and it goes the regular path through the city council and into the yearly budgets. And then we also applied and just got confirmation from the postcode lottery for a education project for elementary school students, which during the next year can take part in many courses with their schools at some.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, in the beginning you mentioned that you want to build a bio workshop in your house as well. Can you tell us something about this?
That is going to be part of a tinkering workshop. So we have a small startup also located in our building, which is working on growing mycelium and mushrooms, and as a kind of well, when they started, they didn't have any funds to pay for rent, and we had empty space in our building which we couldn't use yet. So they made use of a space, and they're paying us back by designing a bio lab and workshop materials in the area of myceliums, but it can also be extended to other areas. It's a smaller part of a tinkering workshop, and the tinkering workshop is meant to be the low entry barrier for everyone. So it's kind of the drug that gets you hooked into making, meant for the people that have never been to any workshops, maker spaces, and don't know the way around screwdrivers or soldering irons. They can go in there, take a workshop or even a small kit and get started like here with the soldering kits, and get introduced to making things, hacking and others, and the biolab is going to be one part of that. And actually Melanie's back there, she's going to be head of that part of the workshop, so maybe you can talk to her about the details.
I have a question about boring numbers. Could you disclose how much recurring funding you get from the city, and do you have to report something back, like we did this and this and that, or do you have any obligations against the city to provide this and this and that?
So yes and yes. The funds are all public on the city publication, so there's nothing hidden there. So we have roughly 2 million euros of construction funds that we top up with our volunteer work, because it's actually not enough to get to what you see here in the pictures. And then we have a yearly budget that we hope to have. Right now there is some, as I mentioned, the struggling with the budgets of a city, of roughly 660,000 euros a year, which will pay for the basic costs of maintaining the building, paying for electricity and heating, the basic staff that is necessary, but not the staff that is necessary to actually staff opening hours. So that is all on the volunteering side at the moment, unless we acquire or find other funds. And all the program and content that we try to get through other funding sources.
And this is a contract that we have with the city that we have to renew every 2 years. And we also have to make, like, it's like a little presentation where we talk about what we, like, we try to convince them that we are doing is good and nice. But we also contact a lot with the local council, so they visit us recently. We invite them to visit us and see it, so we don't have to, I hope we don't have to convince them too much.
First, I want to say building a community like that is very impressive, and you have my deepest respect.
Thank you.
You mentioned some challenges with the inclusiveness, and we've been talking about this in the Q&A as well. I want to ask about how you mentioned that in the construction work, maybe female people or trans or non-binary people were a bit underrepresented. So I have two questions. Have you identified other blind spots in other areas when it comes to inclusiveness? And if so, have you got any ideas how to approach those issues and become even more inclusive than you already are?
Should I answer? Yeah, so we're really trying very hard to find solutions. Of course, I don't think there are any solutions that we can share with everybody. We actually even got together with the maker spaces in the area, and we had a discussion about what their ideas are. I think one of the things that you can do is have role models, and if people see that there's diversity, then they also feel welcomed and they feel that they can belong there. And we also try to offer events which are, for instance, like Julian was telling about these Zusammenräume and this renovation or how would you call them in English? Renovations, working on the especially, for instance, only for women or non-binary people, just to have them pass over this threshold, because sometimes it's a bit scary when you tell them, oh, you have to break down walls or do these things, but there are a lot of work that can be done. So we try to invite them. Also, in the case of women, studies show that they're interested in things that where they can see like some kind of change for society or like some impact for society, and maybe we try to sell it like this, like you do this for the community, this will help the community, help other people. This also encourages more women to come. But we really don't have a solution, and this would be a super interesting conversation. Maybe there should be a talk only about this, because I'm also interested in contributing to that.
So what I tried, I made a survey. I asked all of the female participants that have participated in the past in the renovation work on their opinions, but nothing really conclusive came out of it. One of the things that we did change afterwards is that when we have the dinner, we always have this round of introductions, because that was one of the things that was mentioned by several people as well, was that it's sometimes hard that the conversations are, for example, very techy, and it's really hard to get into, or two people are having a discussion and dominate the whole table. So we try to break that up by having this round of introduction always paired with an icebreaker question where you can, I don't know, tell about your favorite tool or what you did last weekend or something like that, just to get conversation started and people introduced on a more personal level, which I think is really nice, but it didn't change anything in the last half year on that front. But I didn't redo the statistics again, so maybe there was a slight change. It didn't feel like it, at least. Yeah. But trying out a Flinter-only Zahnräumen is one of the ideas that we want to pursue as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both, and thank you for the questions. If you have any further questions, where can you be found?
So we're staying at the SoCo assembly downstairs, hall 4. If you search for ZAM at the C3 NAV, you will find us there, and ask for Shumi or Julian, and we'll be around there.
Yes.
So,
Thank you
so much.
So big round of applause for you. Thanks a lot.